What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Premier League Week 13 review. So let's jump right in. We have quite a few results that some of them were shocking, some of them were not good for certain teams, but let's talk about it. So, kicking off Saturday morning, we had a bunch of games all at once. So, first one to talk about is Spurs West Brom because, frankly, didn't see this one coming. Spurs, I thought for sure they were going to bounce back after the disappointment against Arsenal last week. West Brom, I'm thinking, they've been terrible. Even though they just fired Tony Pulis, I don't expect much of a reaction. But they got a reaction. The goal was a bit lucky. Yes, it was one of those where he mishits it and it happens to throw off Lloris. And it was like that one moment. I didn't see much of the game aside from that, like the first 10 minutes, because then I went to watch the other game. But, it seemed like watching some of the highlights, Tottenham were pretty much in control for the rest of the game. And it took that one moment from Harry Kane to finally equalize, but they couldn't seem to find a winner. So I feel like the result is probably a bit unfair to Tottenham because it seemed like they were a bit more in control. But West Brom doing well to defend and hold it off, especially considering last weekend they gave up 4 against Chelsea. It's very interesting to see that they go away from home and they manage to only keep Tottenham to 1 goal. So I think it is a bit of a reaction from him. It's a bit more of a Tony Pulis result that we've seen in the past few years, where you go to one of the top teams and you make them struggle. So I find that very interesting for them, and maybe this is where their season starts turning around and they get back to that safety point. For Tottenham, though, 2 results in a row that are pretty concerning, and 2 performances in a row that are pretty concerning. So yeah, it's very, very interesting what's happening there. On to the next game, you got Swansea Bournemouth 0-0 draw. 2 teams that needed a win, and neither team got it. Of the 2, Swansea is definitely the team that will hate this result more because it's at home and they're in the relegation zone. Bournemouth have put together enough results recently that this draw doesn't really hurt them that much, especially considering they crushed Huddersfield last weekend with only 10 men for half of the game. So, yeah, I think Bournemouth will definitely be okay with a point away from home, and Swansea will be thinking, why can't we get a win right now? Because I think that makes it like 3 or 4 losses in a row for Swansea. So, yeah, it's kind of a worry for them. They're in the relegation zone again, and they really haven't been doing that poorly. They've had a couple decent performances that haven't ended well for them, and they are putting in goals every now and then. It's just they aren't getting the results that they need, and that's why they're in the relegation zone right now. So worrying signs for Swansea that they can't seem to get good results. Bournemouth will take a draw away from home. That's about all for that game. Next up, you got Watford beating Newcastle away from home 3-0. It's kind of been Watford this season. Watford and Burnley have been the 2 shock teams for me because Burnley normally seems like a mid-table side and they're up there near the top 4. Watford, everybody was thinking was going to really struggle, but they've been in the top half of the table doing comfortably well with Marco Silva in charge. So yeah, winning away from home, it's kind of a shock that they managed to beat Newcastle, who have been pretty defensively solid most of the year. Even if they haven't been winning a whole lot, they haven't been conceding a lot of goals in most of the games they play. So to see Watford put 3 past them kind of shows that Watford do have what it takes to really put on a good run this season and do well for themselves and put themselves in a strong position early on. So I'll be interested to see if they can keep this up. Marco Silva has already proven several times that he is a good manager and he's doing very well for himself. So I'll be interested to see just how far he can take Watford this season. As far as Newcastle are concerned, they've done well enough to where they're near the middle of the table, but they'll be hoping to get some results at home. Losing at home to probably one of the mid-table teams is pretty frustrating, and that you could see where you drop points like this every now and then, and all of a sudden now you're just slowly dropping, and now you're getting near that relegation zone. So they'll be hoping that there's not some sort of fallout from this result, and hoping for a bit of a reaction midweek. And then you got Man U facing Brighton at Old Trafford. Yeah, they get the win, but they got lucky. And honestly, I'm going to say this about all 3 of the top teams that won this weekend. All 3 of them got lucky. Man U started off because one, they did say after the game that one of the Brighton defenders did say that it was a corner kick. I personally watched the replay several times. I didn't see the ball change direction at all. I saw his foot flick out at it, but I didn't see the ball change direction. It looked like it stayed the same line. But they get a corner that maybe they shouldn't have gotten. But that's not the problem. The problem is Lukaku kicking Bong in his private area. Like that should have been spotted. And it wasn't once, it was twice he kicked out at him. How is that missed? And that's what I'm gonna point out for all of these top teams that won this weekend. They all had these moments that really shouldn't have been missed because the referee had a good angle on it, and the fact that it wasn't missed, or in some cases it was called. Yeah, you got a serious case of luck here for some of these teams to happen to get a result. And the fact of the matter is, Man U is not always going to get lucky like that. Next weekend or this midweek they face Watford at Vicarage Road. That's a difficult game. You're going to be facing a team that's in good form and good momentum. You may not get the calls going your way. You may not get that missed call in the box that leads to a goal, and they could put one away on you, and all of a sudden you've lost. And so I think that's why, I've talked about before how Man City has been riding their luck with the referees. They've been getting a lot of beneficial calls to them, and it happened again this weekend. But to see just three top teams get some very beneficial calls that help them win games is like, you can't do that every week. You can't, there's no way that's going to be possible throughout the entire season. Yes, it's going to happen. I mean, it's happened for a large majority of Man City's games so far this season. I've talked about every week. I've noticed just these little calls that are going Man City's way and have either led to a goal or led to a penalty or led to the other team not getting a goal. These little calls that are going their way, it can't happen throughout the entire season. At some point, it's got to come back. All Sterling's dives, I'm not a huge believer in karma, but I do believe that a player dives enough and referees see it enough, eventually they're going to not call it anymore. They're going to let him flop and roll around and stuff, and they're just not going to call it. So, yeah, just a little, I guess my little 2 cents on the whole referees for this weekend. I do think, a lot of fans are calling for Lukaku to be banned. I don't know if the FA are going to come back and ban him for that. I personally think they should because, it's not one kick, it's 2 kickouts. If he just swung his leg his way, then they could argue, well, it was just, it was one swing, that was it. But this was swing and then swing and really do catch a hold of him. That's worthy of a ban for me. Whether it's 1 or 2 game ban, I'm not sure. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be 3 for violent conduct because that was very violent. But I do expect the FA to at least look at it if the referee didn't see it. But as far as Brighton are concerned, they did put up a very strong fight. They'll take a lot of positives knowing that it took a lucky deflection goal for Man U to get a goal on them. But they will be concerned that they didn't really test De Gea enough. Most of their shots were not great shots. They were just kind of shots from outside the box without a whole lot of power. De Gea was never really truly tested in that game, except for maybe one time. So, yeah, that's it for that game. And then the last game at this time slot was Palace versus Stoke. Palace get a win at home against Stoke City, who have been faltering. And it's one of those things where Palace have started to look up, Stoke have started to look down, and it's just that weekend where they happen to meet. And so Palace will be hoping to ride this momentum. Stoke will be hoping to get a reaction midweek because, they have really been playing very poorly. They've had some decent results to start off the season, but recently they've been conceding goals left and right. And the problem with that is you got 2 very high-profile defenders on loan. You've got Zuma back there. You've got Vimmer back there. And then on top of that, you've already got a decent back line in the first place. And Mark Hughes is a decent manager. He should be getting some of these results, especially against the Palace side that have not looked good most of this season. You should be getting a result here. So the fact that they once again lose, and I'm pretty sure, let me go back to it. Yeah, they tied Brighton 2-2 last week. And that's a problem. You should be winning some of these games. You should be winning most of these games against the lower sides because Stoke should be comfortably mid-table. But instead, they're dropping points, and now they're starting to get slowly closer and closer down to the bottom. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on. I don't know if a change of system is needed or what, but Stoke definitely need to look and see what they need to do to fix the problem because there is a serious problem with their defense. Then the last one, Liverpool-Chelsea 1-1, a result that neither team needed, and I already talked about Chelsea, but for Liverpool, they'll be looking at it and saying, hey, we managed to control most of the game. We managed to keep a lot of possession. Chelsea will look at it and say, hey, we created the most dangerous chances. We went away. We managed to, hold for a point at least. both teams will kind of look at it and say, okay, they'll take the positives from it, but I do think there will be a lot of people, fans that are looking at it and saying, we don't need a draw. Man U, Man City both win this week. We needed to win that game. And so I think deep down, both teams will probably be disappointed, but on the surface, they'll be saying, oh, hey, we got a draw. We managed to play well. We'll take the draw. It's two good teams facing each other. I just think that's a little too diplomatic, in my opinion. You know what? This is my mistake. We're done with Saturday. I need to go back because I forgot there was a Friday game. It just hit me in the middle of this review. There was a Friday game, West Ham versus Leicester. West Ham, once again, not picking up all 3 points at home. It's been a frustrating season for them. They just got rid of Slaven Bilic. They brought in David Moyes. First home game, it's a draw. And, Leicester, they're a pretty good team so far this season. They've done well. They performed pretty well, but their results have not been great. And once again, another draw for them is not a good result. But, they play really well. And so to see that West Ham did manage to hold their own against Leicester for most of the match, it's kind of like, okay, so there are some positives. But ultimately, you still drew at home. And you're still right there in that bottom three. It's still not good enough. And so I'm not sure if David Moyes is the man for West Ham. I'm not sure if he can get the best out of these players. I know Arnautovic was heavily involved in this game, which he has not been for most of the season. So they'll be hoping that he can start to step up some more, that Chicharito can start to get himself some goals, because they need some sort of reaction right now. And it's not coming. They just keep conceding sloppy goals. The one they gave up in this game was god-awful. It was just... Vardy crosses it and Ogbonna just lets it roll through his legs and swings and misses. I mean, it was embarrassing. So, yeah, they've got to find a solution because right now it's just not working for them and they continue to drop points at home, on the road. They can't seem to pick up all 3 points to save their life. So, next up, we go to Sunday now. First game, Southampton versus Everton. Southampton comfortably winning 4-1 over Everton. Everton. Yeah, it's been that kind of season for them. They got crushed midweek at home against Atalanta. Now they're getting crushed on the weekend against Southampton. It's got to be a terrible time to be an Everton player right now because all the eyes in the world that watch the Premier League are on you right now because there's no reason they should be this bad. Don't get me wrong, there are a couple players that they signed that are not turning out to be as good as everybody thought they would, but you still got some quality players. Sandro Ramirez, probably everybody thought he was going to be on top of this game and just crushing it. Clearly he's not. Clearly he's not as good as everybody thought. But you've got players that have already proven it at the Premier League level. You've got Sigurdsson, you've got Rooney, you've got Keane, you've got Pickford. All these players that are good players. The only player that they lack right now that would probably help them overall is Coleman, Seamus Coleman. He's the only player that when you put him in the team probably makes him a little bit better. They wouldn't concede 4 today. They may concede 1 or 2. But that's still not good enough on the whole of it. Just adding one player to the back line, making them a little bit more solid defensively doesn't change the fact that you're still not scoring goals. You're still conceding and you're not scoring enough. That's a problem. So, obviously, once Coleman gets back, Everton will probably start to do a bit better. But they still have enough talent out there that they should be at least competing in games like this, especially against Southampton, who have not done well so far this season. They've struggled, not as much as Everton, but they've struggled for what they've got. And so to see Everton just get crushed in a game like this, yeah, there's some worrying signs that Everton. They're right now in the thick of relegation. They're not in the bottom 3, but they are very well this close to getting in there. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with them. I thought for sure after they tied Man City, I was like, okay, this is where they'll start to pick up a little bit. Because before that, they were pretty poor. But after that, I'm like, all right, so this is where things start getting better. But they just dropped, and things have not gotten better since. So kind of bizarre, but on to the final 2 games. First one, Burnley versus Arsenal. Like I said, fortunate call for Arsenal to get the win here. Because, in my opinion, Burnley were the better team. Just watching the game, Burnley were better overall. They created the most dangerous chances. Arsenal were limited to shots outside the box. That's pretty much most of what they were able to do. It didn't feel like they were breaking Burnley down. Burnley were their typical resilient self. And then it took Ramsey throws himself to ground because he feels a touch on his back, and the referee's just like, oh, okay. It's one of those things where obviously as a Chelsea fan, I'm pissed that Arsenal get the win off of a cheap call, but I mean, that's just how it is. Man, you don't get a goal called back even though Lukaku's kicking a guy. Ramsey throws himself to the ground. The referee decides, hey, I'll give it. So, yeah, it happens. But for Burnley, I think it's a poor reflection on them because I think they deserve, if not the whole 3 points, they deserve to get at least a point out of it because they were very dangerous. They looked the better team overall. Just not necessarily, kind of similar to what I was talking about with Liverpool and Chelsea in my Chelsea review. Even though Liverpool had more possession and more control over the game, Chelsea were the more dangerous team. Their chances were this close from being goals, whereas Liverpool were limited to one shot outside the box in the first half. Same thing here with Burnley Arsenal. Arsenal controlled more of the game, but Burnley looked the more dangerous team. They were creating a bunch of chances that were just it seemed like it was just an inch off from being a good pass or a good shot, whereas Arsenal just could not get inside the box, it felt like. It was actually pretty interesting to see just cross after cross after cross coming from Burnley. It's almost like they were expecting to, without Mertesacker in, it was like, let's just get the ball in the box. Let's just dump it in and try to get ahead on it. Unfortunately, it didn't work for them, and unfortunately for them, I think it was Lee Mason. He decided that, that was enough of a shove for Ramsey to go over, and that deserved a penalty. But I do have to wonder, though, on that, are they going to come back and look at it? Because, last weekend we saw Nias win a penalty, and now he's banned for 3 matches. Or, no, I think it's 2, actually. But, with this one and with the Sterling one, which I'll talk about in a second, both of these are not enough for a foul. They feel the touch, they feel the contact, and then they throw themselves to ground. Is that simulation in the eyes of the FA? That's what I want to know. Because they need to clarify this rule. Is it just... Because Nias, there was contact there too, but he saw the contact coming in and he threw himself to the ground. Ramsey was very much the same thing. He feels the contact on his back, but there's no shove out. You do see his hands extend, but that's because Ramsey is falling away from him, and so his hands are following him, but you can see there's no actual shove. It's just, I put my hands on your back to let you know I'm there, and Ramsey falls over. Are they going to see that as simulation? Same thing for Sterling. Whenever he feels the grab, first of all, the grab started outside the box. Nobody even talked about that, but the grab started outside the box. But then he lets go, and Sterling throws himself over, and the referee gives him a penalty. Are they going to see that as simulation, or are they going to see, okay, there was a grab to start off with, so it's not technically simulation? Because if that's the case, then we're still not really getting the diving out. We're still not ruling out simulation entirely. We're just saying, oh, well, if there's enough contact for a player to go over, then they still can. And then it's up to the referees to decide whether or not it's a foul. And that's where I think this rule is going to get very murky. Because Nias is going to look at both of these and say, hey, they're doing the same thing I did. I saw the contact coming in, I put myself to ground because I saw they were coming in on me. Same thing for both of these. Will the FA call it? Chances are it's Arsenal and Man City, so probably not. And that's just the sad reality of it, I'm not going to say that Man City are paying the referees, but they've been getting a lot of the favorable calls because it's Pep Guardiola, it's Man City. Some of these refs, that kind of plays in their minds a little bit, and you can tell by the balance of the game. You see these little fouls going more one way. That's part of the reason why. So we'll talk about Man City for the last one. In my opinion, it's similar to the Arsenal-Burnley game in that Man City got lucky, but not in the same reason. Because to be honest, Man City were unlucky for most of the first half. Huddersfield defended well, but Man City's still creating a ton of chances that they couldn't finish. Lossell, the keeper, was doing a great job making saves, and then Huddersfield managed to sneak one off an own goal off of Otamendi. So you could say on the balance of play, Man City were the better team, but Huddersfield managed to sneak one. But then Man City get lucky with the referees in the second half. That penalty given very early on. Now Huddersfield's on the back foot, and it's just a matter of time before Man City get a second. So I think it was in where Burnley, I thought, were the better team against Arsenal and were unlucky to not get a win or a draw. Huddersfield were not the better team against Man City, but they were unlucky not to be able to hold on to that lead for longer, because the referee stepped in and decided to give that foul, which was not a penalty. So, on the balance of things, like I said before, will Man City be able to continue to not only perform in the December months where, like I said, we've got a midweek game now. Will they be able to perform when games are constant like that? Because up until this point, they have had Champions League games, some midweeks, but honestly, they haven't really, who they have. Napoli, tough team. Feyenoord, not really that tough. And then somebody else who I don't think is that tough either. Um, so they haven't really had a extremely difficult group to go through in the Champions League, which means they haven't really had to play tough game for the Premier League and then tough game for the Champions League. It's been mostly tough game Premier League and then they can rest some of their players, which they do have a deep bench, so they can still put out a good squad even against a team like Napoli. But yeah, it will be interesting to see now that we've got some where it's Premier League, Premier League, Premier League. That's where it's going to get a little bit tougher to perform in each of those games. And on top of that, once these refs start seeing, okay, Sterling is going over way too easily, will they continue to give him calls? Will it start to play in their mind? They're like, all right, that was clearly him throwing himself to the ground. Next time I see that, I'll have to really closely look at it to make sure he actually got kicked or touched. So yeah, I don't know. Obviously, Man City still look the favorites. Are they unstoppable? I don't think so. I don't think Southampton will really trouble them midweek because Southampton just aren't that good. But it'll be interesting to see. Some of the top teams are playing a couple difficult games. You got Man U going to Watford. I think Arsenal have a pretty difficult game as well. And then I think Tottenham are going away to Leicester. So there are a couple difficult games, but then you got Man City's playing Southampton, not that tough. Chelsea's playing Swansea, not that tough. Liverpool, I think, have an average game. So it'll be interesting to see how the midweek plays out. I will have a review up for those games as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen midweek. What teams are going to step up and what teams are going to continue to drop. Are there going to be any reactions from some of these teams that are playing so poorly? We'll just have to see. But I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you guys are too. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on this week, this weekend? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe. Future Premier League weekend reviews. And I'll see you guys in the midweek. Peace out.